Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to bring you my Holy Priest Mythic Plus guide for Season 3, 10.2. In this video, we're going to go over the talents, stat priority, and general gameplay that you're going to be utilizing to be able to heal to your dungeons to great success. Holy, of course, is more of the traditional classic healer that is able to react very well to incoming damage and improves their ability to react quickly, particularly in this new season with the incoming set bonuses that we're going to be having. The two set that we're going to be looking at right now is when your Holy Word Serenity applies 14 seconds of Renew to its target, while Holy Word Sanctify applies 5 seconds of Renew to all allies that it heals. While Renew is not really a powerful ability on its own, it's a small bit of like extra healing that you're able to provide to all of your allies that you're healing with your Holy Words, which are really going to be a lot of your bread and butter. That's how you're pushing up health pools the fastest when it comes to dungeon healing, is by leaning on these powerful words to be able to push up health pools, and in particular, your Holy Word Serenity. Now, all of these renews that you're putting out are doing much more than the healing. They're also synergizing with your Force set, where your Renew healing has a chance to cause your next Sanctify or Serenity to not consume a charge when cast and cost 50% less mana. This allows you, primarily in a dungeon environment, to push out a huge amount of extra Holy Word Serenities to be able to push up more health pool and more single target output as a result. To synergize with this, you have your talent tree as follows, and again, link in the description below, and it'll also be up on my guides for Wowhead, so be sure to check those out. But as we mentioned, Serenity is a lot of your bread and butter, and most of your healing in a dungeon environment is going to be single target healing. Abilities like Prayer of Healing, Circle of Healing are just not that powerful in a dungeon environment when you need to push health pools up very quickly. And so what you're doing is you're building primarily towards single target healing. You can also do quite a bit of damage, both AoE and single target, with abilities like Imperial Blaze. Miracle Worker works really well with a new tier set bonus because the tier set bonus causes your Holy Words to not consume a charge, but you need to have a charge of the Holy Word to begin with in order to spend your 4-set proc. So Miracle Worker allows you to hold on to an additional charge and then be able to spend the tier set bonus without actually spending the real charge itself. So it is incredibly powerful. While Divine Image did get nerfed in 10.2, the set bonus is also just giving you a lot of additional Holy Words on hand, strengthening your Divine Image and making you achieve greater value out of it. Some of the other talents, like Pontifex, for example, got buffed. This could be pretty decent, but I don't think it's as good as Light of the Naru and Harmonious Apparatus. And unfortunately, just like an okay ability that you have on hand, it is good to be making sure you're taking abilities like Crisis Management to be able to increase the effectiveness of your flash heals, because you're going to cast a lot of them, so you're able to build up towards your next set of Holy Word Serenities. And you'll be using Apotheosis very frequently to be able to gain an additional charge of your Holy Words and increase the generation of new ones as follows. Because if you're new to Holy Priest, you're regenning and you're building up towards more Sanctifies or more Serenities by casting synergistic spells to reduce their cooldowns. So an ability like Holy Word Serenity, for example, your Flash Heal, and with Harmonious Apparatus, your Prayer of Mending, are all giving you cooldown reduction for your Serenity, so you're able to cast more of those abilities on hand. So making sure that they're all very efficient helps a lot. You can, of course, go into something like Censure if you needed the stun on hand, but most of the time dungeons are kind of clogged with lots of stuns that you have at your disposal. Dominate Mind can be helpful for a couple of the more humanoid heavy dungeons like Throne of the Tides, where you can mind control some caster mobs. Holy Nova and Rhapsody makes her some really strong AoE damage. And of course, if you don't need the Dispel Magic or Purify Disease, you're then able to go into things like Throes of Pain, or even into Light's Inspiration for some extra defensive value, depending on what you need. You can technically run with Powered Life, though with a change where the ability just does not activate at all if the target is above 35% health. I found it very annoying to play around personally, and so I've just been running with Benevolence instead. And unless healing slows down a substantial amount, I think you're probably just going to be running Benevolence in general. When it comes to your stats for Holy Priest, you're going to be wanting to focus on haste and versatility and crit strike a lot in a dungeon environment, with mastery being at the end. The reason being is that you don't have great opportunity to use lots of AoE healing the way that maybe Disc does, where it can kind of heal everybody equally altogether. And as a result, you're almost playing a bit of whack-a-mole when it comes to Flash Heal and Holy Word Serenity, being the real big power punchers in your output in a dungeon environment. The more haste that you have, the more easily that you are able to punch up health pools and begin casting onto the next ally to punch up that health pool as well. The more cast you're getting out, the more of them that are synergizing with your holy words to be able to get more holy words out to push up health pools and keep players safe. Versatility is also great for survivability on hand, and you're already receiving some crit bonuses to your flash heal in particular from the talent we highlighted earlier in crisis management, and so you would prefer the versatility to be a little bit more tanky as a result. But again, item level is always going to be king because you're going to need that stamina, that primary stat, to help you the most. When it comes to your gameplay, once again, as I mentioned previously, Serenity and Flash Heal are usually what's pushing up health pools really heavily in advance, but you also don't want to neglect utilizing your Prayer of Mending as frequently as you can. Whenever there's large amounts of AoE damage, particularly bleeds or just rot damage on encounters, Prayer of Mending is insanely efficient output. And the nice way that you can play around it in dungeons is that you're able to constantly refresh the buff onto your allies and increase the level of stacks they have up to 14. What this allows you to do is to sort of pool up healing so that when the rot damage does happen, when the ticking damage does happen, then Prayer of Mending is already present on a number of your allies. And that can also give you a couple of occasional apotheosis procs from one of your other talents in Answered Prayers, which will be able to net more holy word casts for you, more cooldown reduction, more efficient output that you have on hand. Sanctify is decent in a dungeon environment, but you don't want to expect it to push up health pools in the same way that Serenity does. And as a result, you don't want to be using any of your 2 or 4 set procs on Sanctify if you can help it. So making sure you have a weak aura to track that buff is always going to be imperative. You want to make sure you're using your Serenities frequently and aggressively, but keeping in mind that you can't use your 4 set procs unless you have the holy word available to you already. And so often you want to try to pool up 1 holy word Serenity as often as you can, and then be aggressive about spending your 4 set procs because they only stack up twice and proc fairly frequently. You can also keep in mind that there's areas where you don't need to pool or float that holy word Serenity. Notably, when you have Apotheosis up, it's a very short cooldown at only 2 minutes. And so as a result, you can very aggressively hit Apotheosis, get both holy words back, and then spend them very aggressively so that you're then able to generate new ones and spend the additional 4 set procs as needed to be able to top off your allies. A lot of your pushing up in health pools is coming from Flash and from Holy Word Serenity, while abilities like Heal are almost never used in a dungeon environment. And as we mentioned previously, you're not using or talenting into Circle of Healing or Prayer of Healing. And so a lot of that output is focused on the renews that are produced from your set bonus and not cast. You don't really want to cast renew at all. They're coming from Flash Heal, from Heal, your Mastery, Prayer of Mending, and a number of other little passive heals that the spec has built into it. Things like Divine Star or Halo are usually just used for AoE damage, same as abilities like Holy Nova. And keep in mind, if you want to take advantage of Divine Image's damage side, using things like Chastise before you want to do a lot of damage or a lot of healing can be incredibly beneficial for increasing the effectiveness of this passive talent. If you're talented into Imperial Blaze to use it for damage, you always want to make sure you're casting Holy Fire first, then activating Imperial Blaze so that you can cast those 3 Holy Fires for free, and then you'll almost always have your Holy Fire back off cooldown for a 5th cast in very short succession, stacking up the Holy Fire dot very, very highly onto the target and producing a ton of AoE damage. Usually what I prefer to do is if targets are a priority or they're going to live a long time, I'll multi-dot them with Shadow Word Pain. But if there's a large quantity of enemies that all kind of have to go down equally, I'll just be mashing Holy Nova for overall damage. One of the biggest areas that Holy Priest struggles with is when you have to heal and move at the same time. You are able to lean on your holy words and Serenity in particular for a decent level, but when it's AoE damage that's hitting everybody, that's where the spec can really struggle, and you have to lean on Apotheosis and pooling holy words, or even pooling your 4 set procs in particular to save lives. One of the biggest things I like to do is make myself, when I play holy, as tanky as possible, using things like Spore Cloak, Choker of Shielding, running with large amounts of versatility, so that I'm a lot more defensive than a lot of my other allies might be. You can even use the Protective Light talent to flash heal yourself before damage happens for an additional 10% damage reduction, and then play around Desperate Prayer, your health increase, and Symbol of Hope, which reduces its cooldown, to make yourself as tanky as possible so that you're spending holy words onto your allies, and the leech and any cleave healing you might produce is then able to feed back to you to be able to keep yourself upright in the process. But usually some of the scariest areas are in like Everbloom, when there's massive pulsing damage going out onto everybody and you have to move and contend with all this damage. And so using your own defensives and then making sure you're prio healing some of the weakest allies, or even using Guardian Spirit on them to be able to increase the healing that they receive, goes a really, really far way in making sure you're keeping everybody alive. Because when you have to move and you can't sit there and cast your flash heals, it becomes increasingly difficult to keep everybody healthy. And that's why pooling holy words and also pooling Surge of Light procs that you're able to get make it very, very powerful for dealing with probably the weakest area that the spec has going for it. Some of the big positives is that Holy Priest is one of the higher end damage healers in a Mythic Plus environment, as long as you're not spending all of your time healing. You're able to do a lot of damage if there's not too much damage for you to actually end up healing. And so early on in trash pulls is where you want to make sure you're taking the greatest advantage of max stack Rhapsodies, of Imperial Blaze with its 1 minute cooldown, of using your Holy Fires as frequently as you possibly can. Multi-dotting is great, but you don't always get time to cycle through and dot all the enemies. And so just hitting the occasional Holy Fire is still going to produce an immense amount of damage and make trash packs go down that much more quickly. For the new season in M+, you ideally want to start targeting a lot of like stat stick trinkets. Some of the best ones are pips from the Council of Dreams, which is providing a cycling buff between mastery, crit, and versatility. You also have the Sea Star, which is verse, which procs mastery, and then the Coagulated Venusaur Blood was recently buffed, and if it stays strong in Season 3, that is int, that also procs critical strike. There's not a lot of like really high powered trinkets as compared to Season 2, where you had Rashox, which was insane for everybody basically. This incoming season has pretty much just a lot of stat sticks that you want to be focusing on, and I'd only really recommend running any damage trinkets like the ones from Tindril or from Parak. I'd only really advise running those if you're really confident in your ability to keep everybody healthy, because healer damage, as always in this expansion, is a luxury. It's great if you have the time and the globals to be able to do it, but you never want to risk losing any DPS just to net out one more additional offensive cast. Hope this guide helped to prepare you for Season 3, and if it did, make sure you subscribe for more and check out the Patreon if you'd like to support further. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time.